I'm George Foltz. I live in Milesburg. When I started driving truck, I drove for Davis and Brothers. They had a F8 Ford and a 16-foot Ram dump trailer. So we'd haul coal over to Visco. And that night, we used to take lime and go out to Munn Hall, right on the other side of the Squirrel Hill Tunnel. But let me say one thing. I think back then, the good Lord had to be riding with all of us all the time, or we wouldn't be sitting here today. Because we used to, that old Ford would vibrate and go on. I'd knock her out of gear going down the hills like Herb was saying. And after I get up so fast, the vibrations and everything left. It was just you and the Lord going. And you'd start up the other side, the vibration would start back in again, get her back in gear, you know. Not too long, you're back down in low gear going. So you just pray till you get to the next hill, you get a little fresh air going, you know. But they were the good days. I mean, there were a lot of drivers then. Everybody got along good. They respected each other, and it was a good time. I enjoyed that very much. And then one thing I got to tell you about the good Lord being with us, I hauled into Long Island City for J.H. France for a long time. So one night I went in there, and when I stopped in front of the gate, it was about 4 o'clock in the morning, because I had keys. I could go in there and unload at night, you know. I could get back out ahead of the traffic. So I stopped in front of the gate, and here's this German Shepherd at the gate barking. Oh, gosh. They usually call me if anything's going on, you know, and let me know what to expect to go in there, you know. So they didn't call me. I didn't know nothing about this dog. So I walk over to the gate, and he's snarling, showing his teeth and everything, you know. And I talked to him a little while, and boy, he simmered right down. German Shepherd, you know. And I thought, whoa, waking up with him here a little bit. So where the gate comes together, I got to where I could talk to him. He quit acting like he was really wild, you know. Got my hand in around there and started petting him a little bit, and he's okay now, you know. Opened the gate up, went back out, took my tarp off, and moved my sideboards. But every time I'd move, that dog was right beside me. I thought, boy, that's really weird. I still can't figure this out. So I just got back down off the trailer, down on the ground, and here come this car down. This was nice weather. Stopped right in the middle of the road, get out, and these two guys had big coats on, you know. I thought, well, I can know what's coming off here. I'm going to get robbed here, you know. When they get out of the car, that dog passed them and jumped in their driver's seat, and he's standing there waiting, you know. And I said, Harry. I don't even know why I called him Harry. Maybe it was because I was shook up. But anyway, Harry jumped out of the car and came back over and stood right beside me. And they're looking at each other, and I said, hey, you guys better get out of here, because if he starts on you, he ain't going to quit. And they're looking at each other and said, well, where's the Kozowski Bridge? I said, down that way, just get on this street about a mile down there, and you'll run right on it. Okay, we're going to go. I said, okay. So that dog stayed with me while I got the forklift and unloaded the load, put the sideboards back in, took the forklift back in, put it away, and I come out to lock the gate, no dog. I looked all over for that dog. I couldn't find no dog. The good Lord had to put him there because he saved my life, you know. And I wanted to thank him, but I couldn't even find him. Yeah. So, but yeah.
Does people ever find the road?
I'd rather they didn't come back. That old dog convinced them they shouldn't. But that's my story.
Before the days of the CB, you know, the truck drivers were actually in solitary confinement. You know, that's what I call it. You drove down the road and you couldn't only signal anybody with your headlights and stuff in this order. When we'd leave Harrisburg down there and come up through, we'd stop at Amity Hall to restaurant, and you usually go in there and do your bathroom duties and get whatever you wanted to eat and stuff. You start, and the next stop was Lewistown, you know. And Ward Trucking Company trucks going towards New York City, and we were coming back, and they always used a turn signal. Back in those days, why, if you seen a truck coming with a left-hand turn signal on, that meant there wasn't no damn cops around. You could just fly, and they run the turn signal the whole way down. If they didn't see any cops, why, you could just do whatever you wanted to on the way back. And if you seen one coming with the right-hand turn signal on, then you better slow down because the law is up Thompsontown or somewhere, you know. And we did that for years. That's the way you run, to keep track and the signal back and forth between the drivers, you know. See, they run across 22 then into New York City, through Harrisburg and out 22 into New York City. And the first Mack trucks that were diesels had the air cleaner over by the driver, the old LJs and LFs and that. And back in those days, you could buy starting fluid, ether, just like brake fluid in a pint can. And the drivers coming out of the city would get a can of ether and hold it down underneath the air cleaner. Well, one of them old 672 Mack engines would literally fly if you fed it a little ether, you know. Well, but the engines was flying apart and Mack couldn't figure out what was going on till they finally got it figured out what the drivers were doing to blow the engines up. And that's why all the Mack trucks they put the air cleaner on the right-hand side so the driver couldn't feed it ether going down the road. That was, you know, that's some of the things that we did back then. It was a little different than what these boys today do, you know. But in order to get the power, well, you put the ether to it, you know. It was interesting. Quite a few different things that we did back then. And like the brakes and that we had, hell, I always said you could stop every Tuesday, and that was about the only day you could stop because you worked all weekend, and on Monday they were too tight, and about Tuesday they worked, and then the rest of the week they were out of adjustment. So that's the way it worked. I mean, it was a little different what we have today. I marvel at these guys with 80,000 pounds doing 80 mile an hour. I mean, it's every day they do it and think nothing of it. They just do it different. Our brakes is hard to maintain today, Sam, is what they were back then?
For me, no.
No, but I mean,
You got your engine brake on.
back then, I mean, hell, we worked on our brakes every weekend. We had to, you know, in order to try to get the truck to stop once in a while. You remember the PMTA signs we had on our trucks then?
Yep. Yes, I do. Yeah.
Gentlemen of the highway.
Safety of the road to you.
Yeah,
Safety of the road to you.
yeah.
Yeah.
Courtesy.
Courtesy of the road to you, yeah.
Courtesy of the road to you.
We all had them on our tailgates, you know.
Yeah, I remember that, yeah.
There's a lot of difference between, we had a 354 cubic inch motor driving 10 to 15 ton.
Yeah.
Today they got 500 horsepower driving about the same amount. There's that much difference, you know. We didn't have any engines. Like Herb says, the heater motor has more power than what the truck had, you know.
Oh, it would be back in 59, 60, 61. We used hand signals and light signals and we knew more what was going on and believed the other driver more than the CB radios now. You can't believe the crap you get now, but back then, you know, we knew if they were weighing, you got a hand signal. You know, if you could wind her up, you did this, and that's how you drove. And we knew you could believe George Foltz when you met him, or Dick Bird. Now you don't believe anybody. You just take your chances. But back then, we would try to make time at night. You know, for example, the old Narrows down below Lewistown going to Amity Hall was snaky and crooked. You drove that before the 4-lane down there. Well, we tried not to do it, but brother-in-law there, Merle, and I got exposed a couple of times one night. We were going down there. The first time it ever happened to me, it scared the daylights out of me. We were going probably to Florin Foundry or Bachman, I don't know where we were going, Lewistown or down to Lancaster someplace, but we're going through the Narrows along, and all of a sudden I heard this horrendous freaking roar, and I looked out, and there goes a truck by me, going down, passing right through the curves down there. Well, it was Hall's Motor Freight. And they had those old whites and stuff with the 190s and stuff in them, but we were B61s, fairly good trucks, but they had her wound up, and we were trying to be safe and go through the curves. And what they would do was read the light wires, the telephone lines and that along the side of the road, and if they saw no reflection up in the wire, they run without their headlights. And we were ahead of them. If they saw no reflection in the light wires up above, they knew nobody was coming the other way, so they'd turn their lights out and just pass you right through the curves going down there. And that's what happened. We were going down one night behind Merle. I was following him. This one roared by me. Of course, I had no way of hollering to him. He was by Merle too. And so he straightened the road out. What they would do was, in the zigzag roads, they would just straighten it out and go straight through rather than make the turns and go like hell. And when it passed us, we were sitting still. But we learned then to do it too, and I've been known to have done it a time or two. I remember one night Merle and I was coming back from Illinois. We went out there and got a new Barber Green paver and some parts of that old four-banger GM, and I had driven back into Pittsburgh or someplace, and he was driving home, and I woke up coming down through Armaugh, down 286 from Indiana down, and Merle was straightening the road out, buddy. We were coming home about 3 o'clock in the morning. I just closed my eyes and figured, okay, he knows what he's doing. I'm going to sit here and hope we make her to keep waiting, and we did. He straightened the road up, but you could save a lot of time, a lot of miles if you could keep her hammering going straight, and that's exactly what you did. And Chris was talking about coming up the old Snowshoe Mountain. That A51 Mack that I drove for Dad, from where the sheet store's at in Wingate now to the top of the old Snowshoe Mountain was 28 minutes. When you come up there loaded, put 15 ton of amosite on it at 360 degrees in the bed, steel foot accelerator inside the cab. When you made her to Cape Furls, you throwed the left door open, and I put a B61 throttle in it with the teeth on the rack so you could pull her out and lock her and get up above Kate's in second gear, about 4 or 5 mile an hour, pull her out and lock her, turn the heater on wide open, crank the windshield out, open all the windows, and get out on the fuel tank. And that's the way you came up the mountain. To keep her from vapor locking, you had to do that, keep it cool enough to make it up the mountain, come all the way up, all the way to the top in second gear. When you got in top, you crawled back in and undid everything. You could coast down the other side, headed toward Indian Grove. But 28 minutes, and now you'd probably make it in 14. I don't know what it would take. Doesn't take very long with these powerful trucks today. But I'm just amazed at my son's trucks there. You getting them and the way they go. It's unreal to compare the difference. And somebody mentioned the Mack, the first Mack V8s. Lonnie Kavalik Lumber down home bought a 375, which is, small horsepower compared to today. But they had a B61 and hauling lumber to Lewisburg. And Lonnie himself told me he shifted 242 times from Snowshoe to getting off at exit 30. He bought the F model with the V8 in it and shifted 7 times. So that's the difference on how much horsepower it made difference between that and the old B61s and the quadruplex. And you guys know it. So that's the difference you did.
I think there was tilt cab Red Internationals, and Cummins 220 was a big engine back then. And they had a power shaft driven off of the front of the engine back along the side, and the radiator set behind the cab for cooling. No, it's a regular little tilt cab. Regular little tilt cab, about like a...
Pretty hot.
No. But I'm trying, there was red trucks, and I'm trying to remember what company had a bunch of those. I'm not sure if Hall's had some of them or not. But they had a power shaft along the engine, and they had belt transfer up to the fans, and the radiator actually sat behind the cab. Is when 220 Cummins is a big engine.
They didn't build very many of them.
No.
Sounds like something Diamond T would have built, but I don't remember.
Oh, you remember that Diamond T?
Yeah, used the International cab.
Daddy, you have one of those Diamond T cabs out there, a tilt cab?
I used to lay down across that cover and go to Philadelphia and pick up sugar. And usually you had to wait a little while before you get loaded. And be dead tired because I've been driving half the day or half the night. So lay down across that. And of course those engines, when you shut them off, then the heat would really come up. Would be trapped in there. I'd get awake, I'd be wringing wet. Then go back and load sugar, then you were wringing wet and sweating, you would be sticky. And then you start for home. And often thought it would have been so nice if there had been some place you could have taken a shower. And at that time, there were no things such as truck stops that had showers in them. So you'd wash at a sink somewhere or just go home all sticky and sweaty.
Yeah.
But now, like you said, it's a whole different world with air-conditioned cabs and all.
Oh, yeah.
And it would almost be a nicer atmosphere in a truck cab than what would be in your home in a lot of cases. But I think of what I went through, and then when I would talk to my dad, and he said what he went through, and we didn't know very much either, because he started in 1933, and New York City, from Orange Spring to New York, was about 35 hours trip. That's driving time, up and back. And now you would do it in what, 10? or less.
More or less.
A little less, yeah. And 2 trips a week, go to New York and back. And it was a full week. Now, he always, and I have to kind of redeem myself with the Mack people because I'm always picking on Macks. But his first load was back of a GMC truck, and T16, I think, was the number. Hauled 8.5 ton. And he thought he was really doing something. Got to New York and had a load of paper from Roaring Spring, and the paper was loaded on chain drive Macks that came down from Boston. A printing outfit up there bought the paper. Took the 8.5 ton and set on the one side of the Mack truck. He said, I thought I was doing something hauling that much, and he said, you should put it on the one side of the Mack. But he asked the driver, one of the fellows with the chain drive, he said, those trucks never wear out, do they? And he said they wear out an awful lot of drivers.
Yeah, true.
And I think that's still true, Mike.
Wow, they're comfort now.
But back in the early 50s, the townships around home and that didn't have their own snow removal equipment like they did today. And we had a little 4-wheel drive Dodge military truck that we'd fixed up to plow snow. And then we got a hold of a bigger truck. It was a 1.5 ton Chevy 4x4. It was a military truck from the Second World War. We fixed it up to plow snow and made a heck of a good snowplow truck. And Merle and I here wound up, we'd plow snow for Carthage Township, Covington Township. Once in a while we'd sneak up into Girard even some. And we'd wind up plowing snow in a bad storm maybe for 2 or 3 days before the truck come back home. We'd just keep trading around from one township to the other to get our snow plowed. And so in the spring of the year when snow gets soft and it's a little bit hard to plow, we'd plow the Caledonia Pike last, and my mother always got College Inn egg noodles in glass jars with a twist lid and pop-off lid, I guess they were back in those days. And we decided we were going out to Caledonia Pike, where we'd grab a loaf of bread and one of those jars of College Inn egg noodles, and we started out to Pike while we laid in on the intake manifold of this Chevrolet truck, and we'd plow our way out, and we'd get out to the turnaround place while we'd get our spoons out, and we'd share that egg noodles, and it was pretty good eating for truck drivers back in those days, you know. So anyway, we fought our way out, and we was then putting our sight in the turnaround place, and we heard a heck of an explosion under the hood. Here the doggone jar of egg noodles blew apart and just had egg noodles all over under the hood, every place. So we remember plowing snow pretty well after you gather your egg noodles up off the engine. You don't eat them, I can tell you that. That was kind of interesting. Do you remember that time, Merle?
Yeah.
We would leave Key Waiting, and usually it'd take you about an hour to get out there, and that day it must have took an hour and a half or 2 hours, and we didn't get no egg noodles that day for sure.
Left them a little too long.
But nowadays the townships all have their own trucks and stuff in that order, so we don't have to worry about egg noodles no more.
Just me.
Just you, man. Yeah, he's doing it now, yeah, right. It's kind of interesting. The situation with the military Chevy, it was one of the very most dependable 4-wheel drive trucks in that size back in those days, because there wasn't many people built trucks like that. So the 4-wheel drive Chevy made a real good military truck and made a good truck for pushing snow then. You could chain it down and fight your way through snow drifts and stuff where everything else would fall apart in those days. So did good. Yeah, we were moving a 54B shovel from there at Phillipsburg at Troy Bridge up over the hill where the new prison system is and out there now. B&B Construction in Phillipsburg had them big Sterling trucks with chain drives, you know. And I'm standing on the running board with the driver, and you could hear them chains clickety-click, clickety-click, clickety-click back there, you know. And I got to wondering, well, just what the heck would happen if one of them chains broke, you know. So I said to the driver, I said, buddy, I said, what the heck do you do if one of them chains breaks? He said, you let go. He said, I'll push you the hell out of the road when I'm coming out, he said. I guess there wasn't any hold, that's what he's trying to tell me, you know. But those old chain drive Sterlings, and they do about 30 mile an hour on the road, but you can load anything onto them. Now, today, if you wanted to move that machine today, you'd have to have a crew of men in about 3 days to tear it down and 3 or 4 days to put it back together, and about 4 or 5 trucks to haul it. But they just crawled on and away you went. And I believe there were 1,424 tires, something like that on them, great big tires and stuff. Do you remember those trucks, Bob Rye? They were really big, and they had I-beam trailers, and you'd slide the beams back under your load, and they'd jack it up with them railroad jacks and put the tires on back there, and away you go. You don't see anything like that around anymore. They got all these fancy goosenecks and stuff in that order, but those big old beam trailers, I don't know how much they'd haul, but I've seen them going with the boom and everything sticking out the back, and they just keep going. But today, I think the law would probably have something to say about that. My son Chris rebuilt an EQ Mack, and it is a nice truck. He did a beautiful job of that, you know. But I was tortured with them things for I don't know how many years, just trying to keep running to haul coal. So I never would help him work on that thing. I figured let dogs lie. I wasn't going to get that in the weight no more, you know. But he has a beautiful truck, and it worked out real well.
I'm Buzzy Bachman from Driftwood, Pennsylvania. This is supposed to be stories about old trucking. I relayed one here break time that everybody wanted to hear. We're talking about how technology has changed. In the summer when they were working on the Driftwood Bridge, the traffic was rerouted because of the detour. And one driver for, I believe it was Swift Transport, got off Interstate 80, had his GPS unit set on shortest route. So the shortest route, he was up 255 to Weedville, then it showed him to take 555 into Driftwood. Well, he got 8 miles from Driftwood, and the GPS told him to make a left turn onto Houston Hill Road. Houston Hill Road's about a truck and a half wide and 12 miles up over the hill and down into Sterling Run, where it's tough to take a log truck, and he took a 53-foot van trailer loaded with powder for the pressed metals. When he got to the foot of the hill into Sterling Run, the bridge is made to take a car over. You couldn't get a truck over if you had to. He got wedged in there. They had to get a loader from up in the coal mine to come down, and he got a hold of the back end of the trailer, and between the two of them, they pulled him out, had to pull him down through the ford, through the run where they take the cement trucks and the wood trucks, and then had to pull him straight again, and he had to back a quarter of a mile, then back out to where he could get on 120 to continue on his shortest route. So a lesson learned would be check the shortest route, make sure it's passable. Back to one that was an old joke, or from the old trucking business. This was an uncle of mine. My dad run a dozer for a guy stripping coal up in Sterling Run, and my uncle run fuel truck. And if memory serves me correct, I believe the fuel truck was about a 47 Ford F6, F7, something like that. Mechanical brakes and naturally nothing power. Well, they fueled up down at Sterling Run right there by the boss's house, and the boss's boxer would always ride with my Uncle Willis in the fuel truck. All one summer there, why the dog rode along with him. Towards the fall, why Willis was coming down from the tipple, going down into the cut to fuel the loading shovels, and brakes let go on the old truck, and he didn't make the one curve and went straight down over through the woods and down into the bottom of the run. That's where the truck, him and the dog wound up. So he wasn't hurt. Nobody was hurt. He got out of there, and the dog left. He didn't see the dog anymore, and he caught a ride with one of the trucks back downtown. And so for a couple of weeks, he hauled fuel in a 55-gallon drum till he bought another fuel truck. New fuel truck came, and Willis was out there filling up the fuel truck, and the dog was sitting there on the porch like he always did. So he got the truck fueled up, and he called the dog. Dog would never move off the porch. He was all right, but he just wasn't going to ride with him anymore. The dog was pretty smart. Thank you for the opportunity. That's my stories.
My name's Bob Rye from Phillipsburg, and I've been driving my own truck since '59. It was a B model Mack, a B61, which I really thought was the greatest thing on the road till I saw the old stainless steel auto cars that Edgecombe Steel had, and then it had to be auto cars. But in the meantime, there was a Brockway on the scene for a while, but it had auto cars and kind of stuck with them most of the time. But the only story I can think of is I had a Peterbilt I bought in '68, and it had a 4x4 Spicer in it, and it had two 4-speed transmissions in it instead of the regular old 4x4. But it wasn't much good. It didn't hold up very well. And I was down in Williamsport, and the transmission went out of it, so I drove it into the white dealer there in Williamsport. They were pretty good with Spicer transmissions. They had the roller bearings in them, and there wasn't too many places had parts for them, but their old shop was on 3rd Street in Williamsport. And we took it in the shop that day. They tore it out, and that was the beginning of that week. It was the beginning of that Agnes in 1972, I guess it was, when that happened. But it had been raining for about a week, and the mechanics were working on all the trucks in the shop, and one by one they had to leave because their wives would call and they'd tell them they had to go home because the water was in the basement or whatever. And the only one left at the end of the day was the shop foreman. And he finished putting my truck together, and then I went back down to the sand plant in Montoursville, picked my trailer up, and the whole way out through Williamsport and out through Lock Haven and all, I was running through water up to the fuel tanks. And I specifically remember when I went across Pine Creek at Jersey Shore, looking at the bridge up the stream, and there was 2 houses jammed up against that, or cabins, whatever they were, and the water was running around the bridge and in the fields. But then the whole way up the valley where we used to run into Port Matilda and up over Port Mountain, I was running in water a lot of times up to the fuel tanks. Well, I bought it was a year old when I bought it from, it was a 74 auto car bought from, out in Blairsville. What was the name of the outfit in Blairsville, Sam? It had all the triaxles and the,
Neil, was it?
what's that? Neil, yeah. I bought it from Harry Neal, and I drove it. It had 92,000 miles on it when I bought it, and I drove it for almost 25 years. When the frame finally gave out on it, it had 1,800,000 miles on it. And some days, it was hard to put a lot of miles on a triaxle dump because there were some days you'd only drive, you'd work 12 hours or so, and you'd only go maybe 200, 250 miles. Sometimes less than that, it depended on the haul. But I still have that truck, and it's in a state of restoration, I guess, a long restoration. But that truck put 4 kids through college. That's why I kept it all that time. Couldn't afford to trade it in or get anything newer.
My name's Larry Wolf. I'm from Bellefonte. I can tell a lot of stories, but I'm not going to tell too many. So we talked about someone talked about the slow trucks. I can relate to that. They went up the hill as fast or as slow as you went down the hill as slow as you went up the hill because you didn't have much of anything for brakes. You went down the hill slow all the way down. Of course, I can remember one time this fella told me, he said, you can really save your brakes if you just go in high gear down the hill. One was Penfield there, down into Penfield. Of course, I tried it. This is years ago, and it always worked out. But when I look back, how stupid that was, Go right off the top, high gear, and down off you'd go. And you had good brakes, as long as no one got in front of you. And that fella told me that he drove truck all his life and still living. But some of the dumb things we've done, passing and no lights and kicking it out of gear and stopped at Mifflintown, started snowing. We were going down to Dundalk to the piers, and we took off. We aren't, we're driving, we're okay as long as nothing happens. We're just running along pretty good, and this car spun out in the bridge down in this dip in Maryland there. And I go in the brakes, and it's icy or slippy, and couldn't stop. The car stopped to look at this car that spun out. Stopped right in the middle of the road there, and I thought, oh, this is it. But I made it through, so the good Lord's watched over me a lot of times. Time I'm going up the road, and there's a load of wood chips. He was coming south up towards Wellsboro, and that's when we had CBs, and he was on the wrong side of the road. It was on a curve, and I can still see the side of that trailer, just right in front of me. And there was a guy behind me. He said, I thought sure that, he said, I don't know what kept that trailer from coming over on you. I mean, he came around the curve here and he gave her a whip back to his side of the road. So, some of it's, I did a lot of stupid things. And thankful to be here.
Played the odds.
I guess.